Letting eggs sit out for too long can lead to serious problems, something we all know to avoid. Most of us wouldn't dream of keeping eggs fresh for more than a week or two without a fridge. However, the Amish have their own method to keep eggs preserved well beyond what modern appliances can offer, all without electricity. It's remarkable how they maintain these old methods while the rest of us rely heavily on modern technology. For generations, they've perfected techniques to keep eggs fresh for years. Yes, years, using nothing complex or high-tech. Here's where it gets even more fascinating. You'd think keeping eggs fresh for over a decade might involve some advanced device, but the Amish rely on a method as simple as it gets: lime water. And no, this isn't the lime you add to a refreshing drink. It's a centuries-old trick that's incredibly effective. Lime water is made by dissolving calcium hydroxide in water, which isn't as complicated as it sounds. Calcium hydroxide, or slaked lime, has been used in everything from construction to food preservation for ages. So, how does it help with eggs? The Amish soak their eggs in this lime water solution, and that's when the science kicks in. Eggshells have tiny pores that allow air and bacteria to slip in, eventually spoiling them. But when the eggs are placed in lime water, the solution coats the shell, blocking those pores and forming an airtight seal. This natural barrier keeps air and bacteria out, allowing the eggs to last for months or even years without going bad. It's like giving each egg its own protective shield. No bacteria stands a chance. Interestingly, the Amish didn't invent this method. Lime water preservation dates back to medieval times, when people needed to make their food stores last through harsh winters. This ancient preservation technique has been used for centuries, long before refrigerators were even imagined, showing that necessity often drives the most innovative solutions. The Amish aren't just clinging to old traditions, they've perfected techniques that most of us have long forgotten. It's surprising how something as simple as lime water can achieve what our refrigerators can't. While many of us would worry about a fridge failure, the Amish have a method that doesn't rely on any electricity, probably outlasting the lifespan of a typical fridge, and without the usual breakdowns. The more I discover, the more it makes me realize how much we depend on appliances. What's even more impressive is the scale at which the Amish preserve eggs. This isn't just a few eggs here and there. For long-term storage, Amish families might preserve thousands of eggs in lime water over the course of a year, ensuring they have a steady supply, no matter what. It's a level of readiness that's hard to imagine unless you see it firsthand. Most of us struggle to keep up with a dozen eggs from the store, but the Amish have it all figured out, storing their eggs in lime water, ready to be used whenever needed. Interestingly, there's another clever technique they use to preserve eggs: oiling. It sounds unusual, but they coat their eggs with mineral oil, a harmless substance, with amazing results. Here's the science behind it. Eggshells have tiny pores that let in air and bacteria, which eventually spoil the egg. Coating the shell in oil seals those pores, forming a protective layer that blocks oxygen and keeps the eggs fresh for extended periods. At first, it may sound a bit out there. Most people wouldn't think to oil their groceries. And to be clear, don't try this with your milk. But the Amish have known about it for ages, and even modern homesteaders are rediscovering its benefits. Mineral oil is affordable, easily found, and it doesn't spoil the eggs. It just keeps them fresh and well protected. Many people are trying it too, because let's face it, the idea of eggs outlasting the milk in your fridge has a certain charm. I even tried it myself once, just to see if it worked. I picked up a bottle of mineral oil from the pharmacy, you can usually find it in the skincare aisle, and started oiling up some eggs. It felt a little odd, almost like I was prepping them for deep frying, but weeks later, those eggs were still as fresh as when I first got them. Who knew a little bit of oil could make such a difference? And here's an interesting tidbit. This idea of coating food for preservation isn't new. Long ago, people would cover cheese and even meat in fat to make it last longer. The concept of sealing food from air is an age-old preservation technique that's been used for centuries, even if we've mostly replaced it with plastic wrap and vacuum sealing in today's world. Oiling is an incredibly straightforward method for preserving eggs. No complicated science, no fancy steps. Just coat the eggs, and you're done. The best part? Anyone can try it at home without special tools. With just a bottle of mineral oil, you can create a stock of eggs that will last you through winter and beyond if you're up for it. One of the few products we recommend is a book by Claude Davis, a seasoned prepper, covering 126 superfoods and preservation methods from tough times like the Great Depression and wartime. We're sharing it because we're the last generation with the chance to pass down these techniques and survival foods to future generations. It'd be a shame for this vital knowledge to disappear. You can also find an herbal remedies book by Nicole Appelian in their store. If you're watching this on TV, look up our channel, Frugal Solutions, on your phone or tablet to find these books through links in our description. Now, moving on to another classic egg preservation trick in the Amish toolkit, vinegar. That's right. The same sharp, tangy liquid you drizzle on fries or add to a salad is also an effective egg preserver. And this use is much more practical than just sprucing up your fries. Here's the idea. By dipping eggs in vinegar for a short bath, the vinegar's acidity kills bacteria and adds a protective layer to the eggshell, almost like a suit of armor. No swords or shields needed. Once soaked, these eggs last much longer than a typical carton in the fridge. I always thought vinegar was mainly for cooking and maybe cleaning, but apparently, it has some serious preservation skills. Interestingly, this trick has been around for ages. Roman soldiers used vinegar to preserve their food during long, tough marches. Imagine those warriors keeping their rations fresh in a way similar to how the Amish preserve their eggs. Who would have thought? But here's the twist. Vinegar isn't just for eggs. It's a centuries-old kitchen hack used for pickling veggies and preserving meat. Many of us might be wary of food sitting in vinegar, but it turns out to be an all-purpose survival tool. If it worked for the Romans, it'll likely keep your eggs fresh too. Now, I haven't tried the vinegar dip on eggs yet, but I'm tempted. I can already picture a stash of vinegar-preserved eggs, fresh for months. If you're ever in a pinch, whether it's an emergency or just for getting the grocery store run, imagine the relief of having a stockpile of eggs ready to go. Let's dive a bit deeper into why eggs spoil in the first place. We all know that unpleasant feeling of cracking a bad egg. But what actually causes eggs to go bad? The main culprits are bacteria, air, and moisture. While eggs are cleverly designed, they have a few vulnerabilities. Tiny pores in the shell can let in bacteria, moisture can lead to mold, and exposure to air causes oxidation, spoiling the egg. This is where the Amish preservation methods shine. While most of us simply put our eggs in the fridge and cross our fingers, the Amish have refined techniques that actively guard against these threats. Remember that lime method? The water bath method effectively seals up the tiny pores in the eggshell, making it impossible for bacteria to sneak inside. The oiling method? That's like locking the door tight. No air or moisture can get through. And that vinegar dip we mentioned earlier? It's a fast and easy way to eliminate any bacteria before it even has a chance to spoil the egg. These aren't just clever tricks. They're real solutions to challenges most of us aren't even aware of. For the longest time, I thought my refrigerator was the ultimate egg preserver. Turns out, it's not as effective as I thought. Sure, refrigeration slows down spoilage, but it doesn't stop it completely. Here's an interesting tidbit. The eggs you pick up from the grocery store, they've already been washed and processed, which removes their natural protective coating. So, while they look shiny and fresh, they're actually halfway to expiring by the time you bring them home. And get this, eggs don't technically need to be refrigerated, at least not everywhere. In Europe, for example, eggs are left out on the counter or stored in a pantry. It's mainly in the US and a few other countries where refrigeration is necessary because regulations require eggs to be washed, which strips them of their natural defenses. While we're busy cramming everything into the fridge, the Amish are calmly leaving their eggs out for months. No problem. Now, I wouldn't recommend leaving your grocery store eggs on the counter because they've already gone through the industrial washing process. But isn't it fascinating how many things we consider essential are really just modern conveniences? The Amish show us that, with a bit of know-how and some basic supplies like lime or oil, you can preserve eggs for much longer than we ever thought possible. No fridge required. When it comes to storing eggs for years, the Amish are pretty picky. They don't just grab any egg and toss it into lime water or coat it in oil. You could say they put their eggs through a kind of quality check before deciding which ones to preserve, almost like a beauty pageant for eggs. And trust me, these eggs get screened more thoroughly than some job applicants. First, they make sure each egg is super fresh. The Amish won't bother preserving eggs that are even a few days old. With a keen eye, and sometimes a sharp nose, they can quickly tell if an egg is past its prime. Think of it like picking the perfect avocado at the grocery store, but with eggs. If an egg passes their freshness test, it's in. Then, there's a crack test, but not the type you might think. The Amish are experts at spotting even the tiniest cracks in the shell. Eggs with the slightest hairline crack don't make the cut, because these small flaws could let bacteria sneak in, jeopardizing their long-term preservation. Cracked eggs don't make the cut for long-term preservation, because those tiny fractures can let bacteria slip right in. It's kind of like picking apples at the store. You check for bruises and imperfections before they go in your cart. But with eggs, it's even more critical, because if you plan to keep these eggs for, say, 15 years, they need to be flawless. An Amish family can preserve thousands of eggs in a year. That's right, thousands. Considering the size of their families and all the baking and cooking they do, eggs are essential. Imagine making pancakes with eggs preserved back when your child was just learning to walk. If there were a Guinness World Record for egg preservation, the Amish would certainly hold the title. So why go to such lengths to select perfect eggs? When planning to store something for years, not days, you need to start with the best possible product. A bad egg isn't just a nuisance. It could ruin an entire batch and lead to regret. You definitely don't want a decade later. This commitment to quality is typical of the Amish, who strive to do things right the first time. The Amish don't just inspect eggs once. They keep checking on them over months and years. If an egg shows any signs of spoilage, it's removed immediately. You might say their motto could be, "No bad eggs left behind." One of their simplest, yet most effective methods is dry storage. That's right, no elaborate technique, just keeping eggs in a cool, dry place. It's almost like putting eggs in a time capsule, except without the awkward choices of what to bury with them. Many Amish homes are equipped with storage spaces designed for food preservation, areas that are cooler and slightly more humid than the average kitchen. These spaces allow eggs to stay fresh without refrigeration, making it like a forgotten pantry where you might rediscover canned beans. Except here, you find perfectly preserved eggs ready to be used even after a year or two. Eggs naturally come with their own protective barriers. Their sturdy shells keep out bacteria and contaminants as long as they're handled properly. The Amish let the eggs rest in a cool, dry environment, like putting them in a stress-free timeout until they're ready to be used. This approach reminds us of how much we rely on modern conveniences. In our world, refrigeration is expected, and if we leave food out too long, we panic. The Amish, however, demonstrate that sometimes less is more. Many of us use our refrigerators like a storage catch-all, often forgetting about food until it's past its prime. It's always amusing to discover that ancient container of spaghetti hiding in the back of the fridge, practically growing its own ecosystem. I'll admit, I've had my fair share of fridge mishaps. Once I found an ancient carton of eggs shoved in the far corner, so old it felt like it belonged in a museum. The Amish, on the other hand, have perfected the art of food preservation without letting anything go to waste. They rely on their intuition and natural processes, so mold and strange odors aren't part of the equation. In Amish homes, eggs aren't just for breakfast. They're essential for baking, so preserving them is crucial. Imagine baking cookies with eggs preserved years ago. That's a real testament to their skills. And the best part? When stored correctly, these eggs might taste even better than store-bought ones. The beauty of dry storage for the Amish is that it keeps them connected to the land and their heritage. They rely on methods that work and avoid the need for modern gadgets or appliances, just the basics of nature and patience. It's a refreshing contrast to our fast-paced lives, where simplicity often gets overlooked. Now, let's address a big question. Are preserved eggs really safe to eat? It's normal to be a bit skeptical about cracking open an egg that's been sitting around for years, especially if you've ever had that uh-oh moment with a fresh egg. But not to worry. The Amish have been using these preservation methods for generations and know a thing or two about keeping food safe. When done right, these techniques can keep eggs fresh for long periods. Methods like lime water soaking, oiling, and dry storage don't just keep eggs intact, they also reduce the risk of unpleasant surprises when it's time to cook. Imagine having a stash of eggs ready for a baking marathon, with your only concern being whether you have enough chocolate chips. Here's something interesting. Properly preserved eggs may actually be safer. Fresh eggs naturally have a protective coating that helps keep bacteria out. Once that's washed away, they're more vulnerable. But when preserved, eggs can retain that natural defense and last longer than anything you'd find in a grocery store. The eggs you pick up at the store may look fresh, but they're usually already a few weeks old by the time you buy them. A funny story. I once had a friend who was skeptical about trying a preserved egg. She wrinkled her nose as she cracked it open, but to her surprise, it was perfectly fine. No strange smell, no odd texture, just a regular egg. She's now a fan and even wants to start preserving her own eggs. Sometimes our opinions change completely once we experience things ourselves. Speaking of experiences, some people have shared stories about eating preserved eggs that have been stored for years. They've even used them in baking competitions with great results. And the best part? Most people report 0 doctor visits after eating preserved eggs. If that's not a glowing endorsement, I don't know what is. However, the Amish don't just preserve eggs without care. They're careful with their methods and follow a few simple safety rules to make sure everything stays safe. The first rule: only fresh eggs are used for preservation. They inspect each one meticulously, rejecting any with cracks or odd spots. If you've ever seen an Amish farmer with eggs, you'd think they're handling fine art. When it's time to eat preserved eggs, the golden rule is to trust your senses. And don't forget the water test. If an egg floats, it's past its prime. If it sinks, it's good to go. This quick test is a great way to spot any troublemakers before they end up in your skillet. Now that we've covered the safety side of things, let's get to the fun part: how you can start preserving eggs at home. You might wonder if you need some insider secret or special equipment. Luckily, all you need is some basic supplies, a bit of determination, and soon you'll be the egg-preserving master of your kitchen. The first step: gather supplies. Fresh, unwashed eggs are key, so if you can find local farm eggs or free-range eggs, even better. Fresh eggs come with a natural coating that's essential for preservation. Here's a tip: inspect each egg for cracks or imperfections. This little step can help you avoid unpleasant surprises when it's time to cook. With your fresh eggs ready, it's time to choose a preservation method. Let's start with the lime water technique, as it's one of the easiest. You'll need food-grade lime, also known as calcium hydroxide, and water. Mix about 1 ounce of lime into a quart of water until it dissolves. Then, place the eggs in a container and pour the lime water over them, ensuring they're fully submerged. It's like giving your eggs a spa treatment. If you're interested in the oiling method, grab some mineral oil, which you can find at most drugstores or online. The process is simple. Take a paper towel, dab it in the oil, and gently rub it over each egg surface. This coating helps seal out air and block bacteria, giving your eggs a protective layer and keeping them fresh longer. And for vinegar fans, there's the vinegar dip. Just mix equal parts vinegar and water, then dip each egg in for a quick, simple coating. It's a minimal effort process with great results, giving your eggs a quick, natural boost in preservation. These simple methods allow you to preserve eggs at home without fancy equipment, just tried and true techniques that have worked for generations. For peak results, let's talk about storage. After preserving your eggs with your chosen method, find a cool, dark, dry place to store them. Many Amish homes have dedicated food preservation areas, but you can easily use a basement, a cool cupboard, or even a pantry. The goal is to keep the eggs in a stable environment, away from direct sunlight. No fancy gadgets are needed, just a bit of common sense, and you're set. If you're feeling adventurous, try experimenting with a few preservation methods. Who says you have to pick just one? Try preserving some eggs in lime water, others with oil, and a few dipped in vinegar. It's like setting up your own egg lab right in your kitchen. Plus, this is a great conversation starter. Everyone loves an impressive kitchen experiment. Eggs that can last longer than what the fridge can manage? That's a story to tell. While you're at it, consider creating an egg journal. Jot down which preservation methods you tried, how long each batch lasted, and your favorite recipes that use them. You'll be surprised at how quickly you'll develop your egg preservation skills, and you might even inspire someone else to give it a try. Before you know it, you'll be the go-to person for egg-related questions in your circle. Imagine this. Friends gathered around, curious and impressed, as you reveal your stash of preserved eggs. You can share your preservation stories and recipes, building a community around these traditional skills and rediscovering the joy of food preservation. Who knows? Maybe one day you'll even find yourself at a baking competition, confidently saying, "These eggs? They're 15 years old. Want a taste?" Just remember to trust your senses, stick to the guidelines, and have fun along the way. With a bit of creativity and determination, you'll soon be part of the egg-preserving elite. Think checking for expired milk is a challenge? Try cracking open an egg from 15 years ago. Now that's taking egg-citement to a whole new level. Using straightforward methods, the Amish have perfected the art of ensuring their preserved eggs are safe to eat without worrying about unwelcome surprises. It all boils down to a simple water test that can save your breakfast plans from disaster. Why bother testing an old egg? Sure, the idea of cracking open an egg that's been preserved for years might sound risky, but it doesn't have to be. The secret is to trust your senses, and there's no easier way than with this quick water test. Grab a bowl of water, preferably one that's clean, and gently place the egg in it. Here's the trick. If the egg sinks to the bottom and lies flat, it's a keeper. This egg is still fresh enough for any recipe, but if it stands upright, or worse, floats to the surface, that's a no-go. It's best to toss that one and keep it moving. I remember my own first water test with an older egg. I dropped it in, thinking I was being brave. Watching it float like a buoy was both disappointing and eye-opening. Since then, I've realized that when it comes to preserved eggs, it's better to test and trust than to risk a less than pleasant experience. The water test is key, but your nose is also a great backup. If an egg passes the float test but smells even a bit off when cracked open, don't hesitate. Toss it. Trust that off smell. Your senses won't let you down. If you want to experiment further, try the water test on eggs that are past their prime, but not too old. It's a great way to practice your skills and work your way up to the world of longer-term egg preservation. You'll be ready for that perfect frittata or fluffy omelet in no time. Just make sure your friends are ready to enjoy your newfound expertise. Cracking open preserved eggs can be quite the suspenseful moment. In a world where approximately 30% of all food produced goes to waste, the Amish methods of egg preservation are more pertinent than ever. If they can make eggs last for years without the aid of modern appliances, there's definitely something we can learn from their techniques. These methods not only help save money, but also decrease the number of trips we make to the grocery store. Definitely a bonus for those of us looking to sidestep the latest trendy health foods. Additionally, preserving food evokes a sense of nostalgia that bridges generations. Just imagine passing down the family traditions of egg preservation. It's much more enriching than endlessly scrolling through social media. We can't overlook the sustainability aspect either. With food prices rising and environmental issues becoming more pressing, the Amish demonstrate that self-sufficiency can be both practical and eco-friendly. And let's talk about the practicality of these skills in emergencies, such as power outages. Knowing how to preserve food can significantly enhance your preparedness, making you the go-to person at potlucks, proudly showcasing a dish made with a 15-year-old egg. Ultimately, it's about adopting a lifestyle that prioritizes sustainability and creativity. Whether you live in a bustling city or a quiet countryside, taking a break from relying solely on the fridge and exploring food preservation could be transformative. At the very least, you'll never have to stress about fridge space again.